All right, hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is for educational purposes, and um, today is video number 270 that we've done on the reciprocal system of theory, and this is a theory from Dewey B. Larson. Mr. Larson put out his theory uh, starting in about 1959 when he put out his two fundamental postulates, and that culminated a long period of induction where he kind of had his first inklings of the reciprocal system way back in about 1930. Took him a couple decades uh, working at night with his slide rule and sitting on his couch to work out the two fundamental postulates, and then from there it was more of a process of deduction to arrive at his uh, theoretical universe, from which he wrote books on physics and astrophysics and chemistry and astronomy, and also economics and metaphysics, including philosophy, psychology, um, biology, and religion. And in 1990, he passed away at the age of 92. And since then, some other people have come to the fore, some of his early followers, and other people who have written some articles and a couple of books on various subjects. But that's the beauty of the reciprocal system, is that if you understand the system, then you can apply it to whatever subject you want. It is a system of theory. So once you get the system, you can plug it into anything. And a shining example of that is Dr. Bruce Perret. We're looking at his article today that is called Extra-Dimensional and Extraterrestrial Entities. And I believe this is our 8th video on this article. So if you want to get in from the start, go back about a week and watch all the videos up until this one, and you'll be able to be caught up on this particular article. Dr. Perret had a few differences with Mr. Larson about the actual theory, and he came up with something that he called RS2, the reciprocal system 2, the re-evaluation of the reciprocal system. But Dr. Perret's understanding of the reciprocal system was such that you feel comfortable with him re-evaluating it, because he really understood it well enough to evaluate it properly. Some of Larson's followers, I feel like they want to revise Larson's system, but they don't understand Larson's system well enough to really be in the position to re-evaluate it. So anyway, the basic idea behind the reciprocal system is that we live in a universe of motion. The universe is not made out of matter, it's not made out of energy, but it's made out of motion. And for Larson, motion was the relationship between space and time. Motion is basically a fraction, with time or space as the numerator and space or time as the denominator. That sets up a generalized reciprocal relationship between space and time. And there are a few caveats involved, and this is really Larson's first postulate. Space and time both have their coordinate aspects, meaning that they come with XYZ coordinates, or if you want, you can use IJK coordinates, at least for time, from coming from our sector of the universe. But three or more dimensions, or maybe three or four dimensions of both space and time. And then time and space both have their clock aspect, meaning that that is a scalar motion, a motion that has a magnitude but it has no direction. For example, clock time. Time is always getting later and later and later and later, but not in any particular direction. And so too, space is always getting farther and farther and farther apart, which you can envision using a balloon with dots on it. Blow up the balloon, all the dots are moving away from each other. Suck in the balloon, all the dots are moving toward each other, but in no particular direction. And this is the exact relationship that the Hubble telescope discovered when they observed that all of the distant galaxies are moving away from each other. One thing that Larson would say is that, from our vantage point in the universe, we see space close up, but we see time far away. So when you think of the time always getting later and later and later, you can think of it kind of in a similar way that you think of the distant galaxies are all moving away from each other. The things that we see at the very distant sections of the universe are all moving away from each other in a scalar manner, and that we perceive that as like the flow or the progression of time. But when we see space, we see it much more up close, and so we tend to see it more in its coordinate aspects. But depending on where you are in the universe, you can see it in the reciprocal manner as well. You can see coordinate time and clock space. Now, the third of the caveats of the first postulate is that both space and time have their discrete units, meaning that there is no continuity of space and time. They both come in chunks. You have to have one full unit of either space or time in order to have any space or time. So those units are very small, but you have to have at least one. And then from there, you have at least two. And then you have at least three. There is no, 2 plus, 0.26 or something like that. You have one, then you have two, then you have three, and so on. And if you have exactly 1 unit of space in 1 unit of time, then you have the speed of light. So the speed of light is, for Larson, what he calls unit speed. 1 over 1 equals 1. And in the reciprocal system, a multiplicative system, 1 is at the center. And so this speed of light is really like the boundary between two sectors of the universe. Larson also called that the progression of the natural reference system. Okay, so the speed of light is really like the null point of the universe, or the 0 point, or we would say the middle. It would be the 0 point with an additive system, like where 0 is at the center, and then the positive is +1, +2, +3, and the negative is -1, -2, -3. Well, with a reciprocal system, 1 is at the center, and then the positive would be 2, 3, 4, and the negative would be 1/2, 1/3, 1/4. But the general idea is there that the natural null point of this universe is motion outward at the speed of light in all directions. And then and like I said, he called that the progression of the natural reference system. And so then the measurements are made from that, what he calls zero datum. That that's where our measurements are made from. So the speed of light is the neutral point, and then you could have on one side everything that's moving faster than the speed of light, which Larson calls the cosmic sector, which is little known amongst legacy scientists. Einstein did, you know, you know, disavowed that whole sector of the universe because Einstein said that the speed limit of the universe is the speed of light. Nothing moves faster than the speed of light. He was neglecting this entire half of the universe that does move faster than the speed of light that Larson calls the cosmic sector, and that has coordinate time, three or more dimensions of time, and clock space. Whereas in the material sector, the sector that's moving slower than the speed of light, the sector that the scientists are familiar with, that sector is called the material sector, and that is where you have your coordinate space and your clock time. Those are the entities that we're familiar with. This is the familiar sector of the universe. Now, within each one of those sectors is the inside units. So in the material sector, you have what is called the time region. And the time region is everything that is inside a unit of space. Because if you remember the discrete unit postulate, if you don't have a full unit of space, then you don't have space, which means that you only have time. Because the universe is made out of motion, and motion is the relationship between space and time. So if everything is made out of motion, and you don't have space, then you only can have time. And so Larson calls this inner region the time region, and that's the region of atomic physics and molecular physics. And then in the cosmic sector, the reciprocal happens, where if you are less than 1 unit of time, then you don't have time. You only have space. And Larson calls that the space region. And the space region is the realm of what the physicists call antimatter, but Larson calls it cosmic matter. That's cosmic atomic physics and cosmic molecular physics. Okay, now those are just the basics of the reciprocal system. Now, Dr. Perret uses a lot of that information to derive his ideas here about extra-dimensional and extraterrestrial species. But he uses many other things that he learned over his life that also inform this paper. So we're moving up to this section here that is called Ascension, the Tomorrow People. Back in the 1970s, Roger Damon Price produced a science fiction series called The Tomorrow People that was about ordinary kids with extraordinary abilities. They possessed fourth density skills, such as telepathy, telekinesis, and teleportation. This is where the human race is heading along the path we call ascension. Since humanity hasn't been there, done that regarding ascension, there is no hard data on the ascension process. So it comes down to an educated guess as to what happens. But with the knowledge of how extra-dimensional entities exist in a universe of motion, we can apply that very process to our own evolution and make a good educated guess. When we start to access the microcosmic dimensions of equivalent space, we are also accessing the realm of coordinate time, three-dimensional time. People have been doing this for centuries, using contemplation, prayer, and meditation. But since our environment was still three-dimensional, it was a difficult process to attain and master, often taking many years of devout study. As our environment is upgraded, that process becomes significantly easier to attain, but still requires the conscious effort to do it. Just as you can repress bad memories, you can also repress psionic ability or psychic ability. It is not forced on you, as that would violate free will, nor is it a handout. It is an offer that you can refuse or accept. As many people have noticed, the sun is brighter and hotter than it previously was, and some days it is really intense. Obviously, we are already in the beginning of the solar transition, and the planets are already responding to it. Opportunity is here right now. We've got that offer to upgrade. Accepting that offer takes man to the next evolutionary step beyond Homo sapiens, to that of the tomorrow people. Welcome to Professor Albert Einstein's Tomorrow People 101 class. Congratulations on your decision to become a tomorrow person. Welcome to the next stage of human evolution. You may note that the way you perceive a few things is changing, particularly the changing perception of clock time. Now that you have access to the first dimension of time, you will notice that you are no longer a victim of causality and can begin to consciously select the circumstances you will choose to interact with in your personal future. The Muggles refer to this as precognition. But as you learn to use your temporal eye, you will see it is nothing more than looking through a telescope at the surrounding temporal landscape. However, at this point, you only have monocular vision, a single dimension of time, and therefore have not yet developed the stereoscopic vision needed to accurately judge durations in 3D time. This does take some time to get used to as you become familiar with the temporal terrain and learn how far things are away based on their relative sizes in the distance. When consciousness is placed in the dimensions of time, it goes beyond simple vision. You will also begin to detect the temporal equivalent of the other physical senses: hearing, touching, smelling, and tasting. Note that these are initially perceived as intuition rather than sensation, and they will be interpreted by feelings rather than thinking, until you learn to use your consciousness to bridge the right and left hemispheres of the brain so information can be shared quickly and accurately between thinking and feeling. After this is accomplished, you will discover that many psychological concepts have the same reciprocal relation as space and time, yin and yang, and the material and cosmic sectors. Thinking and feeling are two aspects of the rational valuing side of consciousness. Sensation and intuition are the sensors we use to pick up coordinate information from 3D space and from 3D time. So, when you start remote smelling the cafeteria across the street getting ready for lunch, please put your stomach growl aside until the lecture is over. This new fourth density experience will be confusing to the consciousness at first, but as long as you understand the temporal landscape behind the strange feelings and intuitions, it is not difficult to cope with. However, many new tomorrow people will have difficulty when they fall asleep and the landscapes swap positions relative to their point of consciousness. Falling into REM sleep is analogous to your consciousness accelerating past the speed of light and moving into the realm of 3D time. When that happens, everything flips, and the consciousness perceives your waking thoughts, feelings, and memories as though they were a dream. Muggles, having no consciousness in the dimension of time, treat the waking and dream states as two separate things. For them, they are separate because there is no bridge connecting them. Now you have that bridge. Your dreams will change significantly as your consciousness will stay linked back to the spatial mind. Firstly, you will remember much more about a dream than you have in the past, and it will take on a living character. Just as you can go outside and nail some boards together to change your spatial environment, you will now be able to do the same in the temporal landscape and alter it. Plant a temporal garden and watch it grow. Both the waking and dream landscapes will begin to merge into a larger reality where science and magic, with a K, become two aspects of the same thing. An important point to remember is that at the onset of this merging, you will have the tendency to treat the new information as external to your psyche. You will think it is coming from the outside. But consider the years you have spent as a muggle with two separate landscapes. Most people can barely remember a dream, and if they do, it is a fleeting memory at best. As a result, you are not familiar with your existing temporal landscape, so it will appear to be something foreign to your psyche. Do not get pulled into this trap. Remember that initially everything in your dream is you. So get to know yourself, and once you do, you will find windows to the realm outside the psyche. The most important point I wish to impress upon you is that you will now begin to experience the energy of rapport. This comes from being in the same temporal neighborhood as your fellow students. As you continue to grow, you will discover that rapport will replace the competition of rivalry, and curiosity will replace fear, because you have the basis of understanding all things. So there is no need to argue or compete. Growth is the fastest when you share what you have discovered on your travels in the new magical realm of three-dimensional time. So when you make the conscious effort to engage the energy of rapport through positive cooperation, things naturally come together and all involved grow from the interaction. Choose harmony over discord. You will, from time to time, encounter others that have a consciousness in the temporal dimensions that have made the free will choice to harm others. It is best to keep clear of them at this time until you have become accustomed to your special powers. Here in Bedrock, they are the Saurians we call the Rockefellers. The Muggles call them the Cabal. My recommendation is to first learn what you can do with your own temporal access, particularly to identify what is you and what is not, so you cannot be tricked by temporal detour signs or the get your free superpowers here booths used by the Rockefellers. The path of ascension is best walked consciously and carefully until you are sure of your footing. I can tell by the way everyone is licking their lips that the Bedrock cafeteria must be open. I believe Wilma and Betty have volunteered to serve you today. I hope you enjoyed this introductory lecture, and again, congratulations on your new standing as Tomorrow People, and we'll see you next time. Okay, that's the end of that section, and tomorrow we will start up with the next section, which is called Ultimate Answers to Life, the Universe, and Everything. And yeah, so that does it for today. Thank you for tuning in, and have a nice day.